بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي الصالحين، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، فإن كل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وضلالة في النار. أعاذني الله وإياكم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. سلام كدب الرجال ولمدي نص سعودي وعي الانت برشدة كمدة وأي نسوق هذا ندور كلنا نسوق عفي متكين في هذا اللي mental health issue كله الحريري كي وحرية إنه في هذا اللي أرمها وحبرشدة كيش كان في هذا اللي عاونا كلن كان حق هذا هذه هذا qofka muslimka ah jooga wadankan UK sidee buu macnaha u ahaan karaa maartay arrimaha la xiriira cadaaladda iyo maxaa la yiraahdaa wadankan qaabka systemka maxaa la dhihi jiray u shaqeyso masalan cadaaladda wadankan oo kale waxaa inoogu martiya kulankan haddii ilaahay ka raali noqdo walaalkeen Jibriil Maxamed Faarax oo ka ahaa xubinka shaqeeya wasaaradda cadaaladda ee wadankan UK dhalinyaro oo wadankan ku koray runtii waxna ku bartay aqoonyahan kana maartay wadankan wax ku bartay islamarkaana ka shaqeeya dhalinyaraha systemka fahamsan islamarkaa tusaale u ah arrimihii dhalinyaradan ka maartay ku guwaabinay ahayd sidee baad adiga oo muslim ah Soomaali ah aan luusgaraynin dhaqankaaga iyo diintaada midnaba haddana society-ga aan dhex joogno aad ula qabsan karaysaa society-ga Australia ama ha noqoto UK ama ha noqoto Europe inteeda kale ama ha noqoto North America Australia kullu waa isku mid Western values inta badan waa isku wada mid qofkan muslimka ah ee Soomaaliga ah ee dhalinyarada ah ee meeshan ama ku dhashay ama ku koray ee joogay sidee buu ku ilaalin karaa dhaqankiisii diintiisii dhaqankiisii isla markaana dadkan ula qabsan karaa sidee buu u samayn karaa qofku integration isagoo assimilation samaynin isagoo ku milmin bulshada sidee buu dhaxgal bulshada u samayn karaya waa arrin iska adag policy-ga wadamada uma samaysna sidaas waxay u samaysay assimilation uma samaysna integration qofku waxaa la doonayaa inuu soo dhaqankiisa ka tago oo qaato dhaqanka wadamada laakiin inta badan uma salaysna maartay in laba dhaqan isdhexgalaya kuma salaysna taa inagu oo ka digtoon sidee baan maxaa la jiray wixii aan isugu wadi karnaa ayaa runtii loo baahan yahay anaan ku dheeraanay insha allahu tacaala hadalkayga ama horumar dhaca waxaan soo dhaweynayaa Jibriil Maxamed Faarax oo insha allahu tacaala caawa marti inoogu ahaa jalsadan inoona qaada dhigi doona mawduucan insha allahu tacaala programka sidoo ugu socon doona insha allahu tacaala haddii ilaahay yiraahdo Jibriil wuxuu maartay inoo bilaabo introduction maartay naftiisuna intuu iskareyn doona kadibna waxaana siin doonaa maartay hada maartay warbixin iyo xog ku saabsan arrimaha cadaaladda ee wadanka qaabka u shaqeyso kadibna waxaa insha allahu tacaala barnaamijka inoo daadin doona ayaan loo dhinaca fadhiya oo shaqaduna insha allahu tacaala weydiin doona su'aalo maartay prepared oo hore loo soo diyaariyo markaa Jibriil u dhigi doono kadibna Jibriil masha allahu tacaala falanqeyn doono waxaa kaloo aan platform ku furan yahay insha allahu tacaala walaalaha inay markaas si toos ah uga soo qayb qaataan barnaamijka inta soo gashay ee jirta Zoom-ka barnaamijku wuxuu live ka yahay hadda ka socdaa Zoom-ka dhinaca online-ka Zoom-ka Facebook-ka iyo maxaa la yiraahdaa YouTube-ka sidoo kale waxaa lagala socdaa oo dad badan ka dhegeysanayaan inta haysata raadiyaha masjidka ku xidhan ee xaafadaha loo kala qaado intaba insha allahu tacaala kale waxaan rajaynayaa in laga wada benefit garayn doono waalidiinta iyo maxaa la dhihi jiray dhalinyarada labadaba inay markaas fiican uga benefit garayn doonaan intii hadda maqlaysa oo fariintan ay gaadhaysana ciddii u dhow ay gaadhsiin karto inay soo sheegto marka barnaamijka laga soo qayb galo ciddii hadda kasoo gaari weydana in hadhow la gaarsiiyo fariinta loo sii gudbiyo insha allah dadka meelaha life kaga jira inay sii sheer garayaan si faa'iidadu markaa dadka ay wada gaadho waxaan insha allahu tacaala uga baxayaa kulanka jibriil فليتفضل مشكورا حاجة إن شاء الله.
جزاك الله خير شيخ. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I'll speak mainly in English, and if any question that comes in Somali, I'll try my best to answer in Somali as well, inshallah. But yes, thank you for the invitation tonight. And I was asked today just to talk about how I ended up in the civil service within the Ministry of Justice, and what journey and process I took to get there. First of all, before I continue, can everyone hear me? Okay. Hadda is good? Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was just talking about my career, I guess, or my journey, on how I ended up in the civil service, for example. And so I moved from Birmingham to London about 4 or 5 years ago now. I went to study at Birkbeck University. That's where I met, of course, Ayal, mashallah. So I went to University of Birkbeck mainly to study in the evening from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, which meant I had free time from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock to do whatever I wanted, to be fair. Coming from, traditional college, where I was studying, going to school at normal times from 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock. It took a little bit of time to get used to or adjust myself with regards to having 9 to 5 free for every single day of the week. And I spent most of my first year, I'll be honest, I personally felt I did waste, because I couldn't come to terms with what to do with the 9 to 5 rather than have fun, enjoy, maybe sometimes sleep. And until I got to the second year of university, whereby things got serious for me with regards to figuring out at the end of the day, the whole reason I'm at a university that is an evening university from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock is to take advantage of the possibility of doing some work experience from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock, whether this is 5 days or whether this is 2 or 3 days. This, of course, then led to doing a couple of internships here and there. And from there, of course, is where I've discovered there are different routes into the civil service rather than traditional routes. So before I go into that, I just want to talk about what exactly is the civil service. A lot of people may not know. So in general terms, the civil service is the branch of government. Well, it is the central government with regards to how policies are implemented in society. The best way to put it is, well, I would say it is a mixture of departments. This can range from public departments, and this can range from Ministry of Justice, the Home Office, the Treasury, the Department of Work and Pension, and many more within government. And within them are public servants who work to implement the policies that are pushed by the government in place. Is one of the main reasons why we have to remain politically neutral whilst working. You can, of course, have your own political affiliations, whether that's Labour or whether it's Conservative. Like whilst working, you must make sure you are politically neutral. So one of the things civil service has always been famous for is how hard it is to actually get in. It still struggles with diversity. It still struggles with, I guess, the promotion of young, diverse members of society. And this, of course, then has led to a lot of people maybe losing hope of actually applying, or always seeing the civil service as a fortress, a place that you cannot actually break through. Is one of the reasons why a lot of young graduates, they normally tend to have one option to apply for the civil service, which is through the fast stream. And normally fast stream is one of the most competitive graduate schemes in the country. Just from previous records, I remember from 30,000 people that apply, around 900 to 800 get through just to the final stages. And from there, close to a number of 200 to 300 people are picked from the 30,000 people that applied. So I thought about this whilst at university, studying 6 to 9 o'clock. I thought to myself, before I get to a stage where I'm going to graduate and stand looking for a job, why not look at other alternatives? And I always wanted to work in the civil service. I studied politics and international relations at uni, and it was a place that I wanted to start off my career, a place I wanted to develop myself. And I thought, it's a place that perhaps, who knows, I could make change in the future, inshallah ta'ala. So the only way I found out about, there was a program that a lot of people don't know about, especially within our community, that is another route into the civil service, which is the fast track apprenticeship. So, and I'll leave detail later, inshallah, for you guys to share, inshallah. And so I applied through the fast track apprenticeship in my second year university. So with the fast track apprenticeship, there's always a loophole, I guess, or things in place that where you cannot actually have applied. So with the case of the fast track apprenticeship, it was mainly to do with the fact that they did not want a university graduate. It was designed for individuals that left school, college, got their A levels, but they didn't want to go to university, and they would train them within the 2 years that they've got them to then become a fully fledged civil servant. I thought about this for a while and thought, is this really the best way to go? Then I looked at the demographic of who was applying, and majority of people applying were the ones that knew the system, and the system was designed. They knew the people applying for these places weren't going to be the ones that traditionally want to end up in this place. For example, when I say the word apprenticeship to a lot of people, especially within my own community, the first thing that people think about is hamali or labor jobs, whether this is electrical, plumbing, or engineering type of apprenticeship. No one knows that there are political apprenticeships, there are finance apprenticeships, there are other apprenticeships within the civil service that doesn't really get promoted as much as we would like. And so, alhamdulillah, that's the route that I took to get into the civil service. And even then, the numbers weren't really on my side, I guess, in terms of my demographic. For example, it was 20,000 people that applied, and from the 20,000 people, they take 700. And I was looking back at my cohort, which was the 2018 cohort, and from that cohort, from the 700 people that applied, there was only 21 that was black. 21 from 700 people that got in. And you can imagine what the rest of the numbers were with regards to who exactly was actually applying and who was getting in. It wasn't your usual, lower class, I guess, working class. I wouldn't say black, but I would say actually lower working class whites within London, within Birmingham, Sheffield.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll speak a bit louder. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's my microphone. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I can hear you.
And I was just reading the comments, and I was just said they couldn't hear me. Sorry about that. But where was I? Yes. So it was actually middle class young men, young boys and girls. Some of them have not graduated uni, but they were in uni. They dropped out for the sake of actually getting ahead of the market and finding that so-called grad scheme before actually graduating. And this is what was missing, I think. I remember when I actually first applied, no one knew about it. No, I mean, most of my friends and most of the people I talked to, no one knew that these schemes existed. So I think it's about making it more accessible to people within our communities to know there are other routes, whether that is, of course, within our community to actually encourage people to go university. I went university, so I guess I cannot use that excuse. But for others who do not want to go to university, there are absolutely other routes into the public sector jobs within central government. You don't exactly have to do a degree to end up in these places. The reason why I say that is because within me, there was a loophole. The loophole was because the fact that I was not graduating for another year, and the program was for 2 years, I had the ability to extend split my final year of university to 2 years, where I did all my exams in my third year, and I did my dissertation only in my fourth year. But I guess this also meant the fact that because the apprenticeship was for 2 years, I was not allowed to graduate, because to be an apprentice within the fast track apprenticeship, you're not allowed to graduate, you're not allowed a degree. And technically, because I applied on the basis that I didn't have a degree yet, I got in. And it's a loophole that exists at the time. I'm not sure that loophole still exists, but I guess in general, it just shows the length that you have to go, actually, to be fair, to get to these sort of places. So yeah, so that's how I actually got into the civil service. And to be honest with you, I actually did not finish my apprenticeship because I felt at the time that my university degree was stronger in terms of as a qualification rather than an apprenticeship. But it does not mean that apprenticeship was less demeaning, I guess. There are some fantastic opportunities within it, whether this is policy, whether finance, technology, or project delivery or project management that is available for people to take and continue with this. But just always important to remember within our own demographic, and this just me trying to be honest, there will always be a glass ceiling you will hit. So I guess the confidence that other people from other demographics, i.e., you know, the majority of people, white people in this country, I guess the confidence they have is they may not have that glass ceiling that we have. And by that I mean is I would advise not to be just leaving, starting the civil service with just an apprenticeship. Always try to upskill yourself, always have the chance, if you can find a chance to get further qualification, take it, don't delay it, because you will hit a glass ceiling one day and you will feel this is it, this is my limit, I'm not going to go past this limit. So I would strongly recommend people to take that, to take any opportunity they can. So on my day job, so I got placed in the Ministry of Justice, and this is where I started off with my career. And it still is my first professional job, and I've been in it for 2 years now, 2.5 years actually. And in the last 2.5 years, I've been working in the governance side of the Ministry of Justice. And I'll explain a little bit about what I mean by governance, because a lot of people, when they think of politics, when they think of central government, they think of policies, they think of rules and legislations and things that have to pay. So to do all of those stuff, you need to have governance, of course. And by working in governance, what I did mainly, I guess we are the last stage before a policy gets published. Whereas this is equality checking, whether this is quality assurances, whether has this policy met all the capability, all the rules in place before it gets published. So that's me. I'm that last person that nothing gets published without us having that final look. So that's the end of a policy. And majority of people, I guess, would rather be at the beginning or development stage of a policy, whether this is actually the research, whether this is the actual implementation of these policies. So there's many different routes that you can take within government. And I think that's it. I think I can talk more, but I feel like I'm better by answering questions, and we can have like an open discussion, I guess, where anyone can ask me questions on anything specific that they want to know. I can talk a bit about, I guess, obviously as being in Somali, whatever. I can talk about obviously working in Ministry of Justice means that we are in charge of all the prisons in this country. And of course, I've been to quite a number of prisons in this country for research purposes, of course. And obviously, I do see with my own eyes the rising number of young Somali men within youth institutes and also within actual adult male prisons. So I can't talk more about in terms of numbers. One of the reasons why I can't talk about numbers at this moment in time is because 2021 will be the next census that will be out, survey-wise. The last census survey that exists is from 2011, and from 2011, with regards to categorizing youth offenders or people in adult prisons, Somalis have tended to be classified as Black Africans. meaning it was hard to find who was Somali in prison. And what makes the situation even worse was the fact that, of course, as we know, within our own Somali community here in UK, some of us may have Norwegian, Danish, Dutch passports. So when it comes to classifying them, they may be classified as a Norwegian, a Dutch, or a Danish. So it becomes even harder to find Hebel in prison sometimes with regards to how many numbers are there exactly. The other question I may feel that may pop up is, what are the sort of crimes these young men are involved with? And majority of the time, it comes down to, I think, the community as a whole. Wallahi, the Somali community in general within the UK comes from a very poor background. So majority of these reasons are, of course, I mean, with most criminal cases, especially within the Somali community, it is financial reasons. Whether you can blame that with regards to drug dealing, you can blame that on fraud, you can blame that on gangs. It doesn't matter. So I can go deep into that, but I feel like I'd rather answer some of these guys' questions, inshallah.
Yeah, no, Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Jibril. I think, alhamdulillah, you've covered a lot of topics, inshallah. Just if you just touch on the apprenticeship, because I think that's where it all started for you, I guess, in the civil service. And I mean, you made a very good point of just emphasizing that it is a specific field, especially particularly within our community, where that's A, undervalued, and B, not seen for its true worth. I think a lot of people don't actually realize the opportunities that are available there. And I think a lot of the time young people actually want to do apprenticeships, but I think the parents, this idea still at university is the king. And I think we need to move away from that. I just feel like, especially the economic situation of our communities, the disadvantages that we face, I think apprenticeships jumps through a lot of things and gives a lot of our young people an opportunity to get in there rather than competing with a Dave or a William who doesn't have that to deal with like glass ceiling. So my question to you is, in the application process, what did you have to do, and how did you find the application process for the civil service?
Yeah, so the application process is different to applying directly for a job that you may see online from the civil service, where this would probably be sending in a CV and a cover letter. Is a bit different when you're applying for a fast track apprenticeship. It's very, very similar to applying for a fast stream. So these are two schemes.
The first question sorry, I forgot. The first question I want to ask is, how did you first locate the apprenticeship, and then the second part, how did you the application process? So if you can just break it down.
Right. Okay. Cool. So I literally found out about the fast track apprenticeship by researching and actually networking. To be fair, I'll be honest with you, it came from my tutors and some of my close friends within university, where we were discussing routes into, because we were talking at the time, we had a year and a half left before graduation. The next thing that most young people think about that age is, what are you going to do? Are you going to be in a situation where you've graduated and you have no job? Are you going to be in a situation where you're going to be entering that rat race without actually having a job in place, where you are, you're searching for a job, you're doing all the cover letters and all the CVs without actually having a job in place, which creates even more financial burden perhaps on your family, the fact that you're not working. Or third option, of course, is the fact that you may have graduated, and this happens a lot. And of course, it's the norm right now, unfortunately. And which is, of course, you graduate, but of course, the market does not give you actually the job that you wanted. So you have to take a side route, which is, of course, just because you have to. You've got no choice. You've got to support the family, financially speaking. So you end up taking a job in, a labor job, or I guess a job that is not suited to what you have studied. For example, say that you've studied in engineering and you can't end up getting an engineering job, yet you still need to put food on the table. What choice do you have other than taking any job that gives you the moment, whether this is, a supermarket job or whether this is something else? So going back to the first question on how I found out, it was literally through word of mouth. And there wasn't, the websites and Google, researching wasn't very clear. And I guess it comes down to how, I think, is a strategy, personally speaking, of how accessible that information is, unless you are really, really researching these schemes that are available to your young people. So I would say, honestly, it came down to just talking to people and just finding out about what other schemes are out there. It's not something as obvious or as that is easy to find, I would say. And I really hope that's something that's going to be changing soon. So to answer the second part, with regards to the process, it's, think of it as just like any other grad scheme application process. So once first you apply, of course, and you have to do an online test where they test your maths, they test your I can't remember now, but it was, they give you a couple of tests from online wise, sorry, and if you pass that, you're through to the next stage, which is you get invited to a workday, and sorry, application center, and in this application center, you've got 3 challenges you have to go through. Challenge 1 is going to be an individual task. So an individual task is you're going to be sitting down with 3 or 4 panel members, and you're going to have a standard interview. Okay. Challenge 2 was a writing task where you're given an instructions to write a submission letter, for example, and you're tested on your writing skills. And challenge 3, which was very interesting, it was you're placed in a group of 10 people. Sorry, you're placed in a group of 5 people. And within that 5 people, these are all strangers. These are all people that have made it to the application center. And within this, you have the judging panel sitting at the end of the room, and they are judging on how you're all given a task. And from this task, you all have an opinion. So with this opinion, you have to be able to diplomatically and, of course, in a friendly manner, convince the other 4 or 5 other people in the room that your idea is the best idea, and that's the idea that everyone else should believe and listen. So they're judging you on your delivery, they're judging you on your how you handle a pressure situation, they're judging you on how you, I guess, engage with other people. So that's what they're looking for, I guess, with regards to who they want a civil servant to be. So that was the process. That was the second part of the process, and the third bit was literally just the waiting game, I guess, of finding out a month or 2 later. I wouldn't say it's the most efficient process. The whole process for me took 5-6 months. It took. I applied in March, and I didn't. It was more than 6 months. I didn't really start the job until last week of December. So that's how long the process was. It took a very long time, and I'm hoping that things have improved since I applied 2 years ago.
So how are things now in terms of A, locating such apprenticeships? Are they still around? And then B,
yes. So
the application process, is it still
it's been running, yeah. So it's been running for a good 2 years now, and I would say that now, I guess, it's much easier in terms of I think the best way to say is social media. It's more, you see more often now, because before it was really hard to find some of this information. Right now, I think there's been a massive drive in the last year or 2 with regards to, I guess, for them, you can call it filling the diversity quota, perhaps, because there's one of the biggest challenges civil service has is some people say, is especially within central government, some people may say as an elitist place, a place only for the highest and most, higher class, or whatever you want to call it, of people. So they've had that issue. And to be fair, the higher up you go within any department, that is the case. Most people come from the same area, same school. That will always be the case, unfortunately. So they've seen the challenges of that, and there's been a big drive to get more Black, ethnic minority people from all Muslim, Christian, whatever communities to get involved within the civil service, and especially within the fast track and also the fast stream.
You bring us to a very good topic now. I think you just mentioned the class aspect of it, or the cultural aspect of it. I just want us to delve into that at the moment in terms of discussing. Will comes from a good Muslim home, Somali, and we have a certain daqan and we have a certain way, right?
Yeah.
And then such corporate environments, there's a dominant culture, whether we like it or not. And that dominant culture goes back to being a white, middle class, upper class, and there's a certain etiquette way of behaving and certain ways of doing things, right? So as me coming home from as a Muslim Somali person coming in and then going in such an environment, could you discuss a bit what the challenges are for you, A, that you found, and B, how you were able to navigate through that?
I think it definitely helped having, I was very lucky to have senior members, I think senior members of the organization, some of them Muslim, you know, Pakistani, Bengalis, mashallah, those brothers, I think have set the standards of how to be proud of who they are, Islamically speaking. You know, especially on Fridays, they're happy to wear their thobes, mashallah. And so I've learned from them in terms of just being proud of who you are. At the end of the day, it's important to, of course, stand up for yourself. But going back to the question of class, it is very obvious, very plain, plain to see, actually, I guess, with regards to how that works out. I'll give you an example. I talked earlier about visiting prisons. One of the reasons why we visit prisons is, the reason I say research is because we are the ones writing the policies that are affected by the people in prison. But we understand that someone like me or someone like, you know, similar to myself, who may know personally someone in prison, or may know, for example, Hebel family, or you know the situation is going to be more personal to you rather than someone middle class that does not even live in London, that lives in Kent, that lives in, you know, outside London, I guess, in these rural areas that are not predominantly, you know, full of ethnic minorities, who don't really see, you know, Black, Asian, ethnic minority people on a day-to-day basis. So imagine they are the ones writing the legislation, that they're the ones writing these policies that gets approved, that has no check-ins in terms of, wait a second, who are you guys targeting with this? Is this going to be general? Is this going to be specific? So I remember going to some trips to the prison, some of the prisons. I remember one prison I visited, Pentonville, in North London, and I remember some of the people, I guess, who was with me at the time, especially within the ministry that came from Ministry of Justice, and the attitude, it's distance. It's very, I wouldn't call it corporate, but I would call it, I mean, how can you blame them? At the end of the day, for them, this is a job. This is a criminal. I don't care about his background story. At the end of the day, my policies will affect him. But at the end of the day, what I do here is to see how the policy I've written is affected by this young individual. So it's all black and white for them, which nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, these are the places where we probably will be needing more, inshallah, Somalis, I guess, in the next few years to enter and, I guess, influence some of these policies, because these policies are absolutely affecting young Somalis, for example, in jail. And I go back to another point where I talked about, for example, mashallah, the Asian, Pakistani and Bengali brothers, for example, and the support system in place and the processes, because they've been, we've been here for what, 20, maybe 25 years, Amal. Some of the other Muslims, Pakistanis and Bengalis have been here more than that. They've had second, third, fourth generations of what they can call it. And that creates, of course, a system and process that, what you call it, I will say, for example, I'll give you an example. Say Will Temjela, for example, in this prison, the processes are there and the support are there from his own family solicitors. I may be talking in general terms right now, of course, but just to paint you a picture of the safety nets, I guess, or protection nets available to that community. And then you look back at a young Somali man, a boy, 21 years of age, Wal Hari, he's been given, because of legal aid, of course, being cut, of course, he's been given, you know, a lawyer who doesn't have time, he has too many cases in hand, there's nothing, there's no support, there's no, for example, sometimes there may not even be translations available, some of his family members, Hoyo, Abba, whoever it is, to provide that connection between him having support that he desperately needs to, for example, beat a case, or just support he may need within prison itself. So what's the he's going to be staying in prison. There's not going to be no justice in terms of fighting for him. Whereas we'll probably there's a whole family with that actually are fighting for him. So I guess it will take time, inshallah. It's but it's a bigger picture than we see it.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, that's a very good point you mentioned, that in terms of like having that knowledge of the system and being able to use it to your advantage. I mean, you're right, Annika. We're quite relatively new in the West as a whole. I think it's not even 50 years that we've been here. And then you look at Pakistani community. You're right. They set the bar quite high in terms of like the work environment, in terms of the way they, alhamdulillah, maintain their deen and maintain practicing the deen in such a corporate intensive environment, but at the same time adhering to their principles. But then that brings me to another point then. Do you think, having grown up in a working class home, grown up in a working class environment in Birmingham, do you feel partly the system is, our lack of knowledge of the system is failing us, or the system itself, it's intrinsically designed for the best, for those who design the system, as they say, the middle class or the upper class? They design the system in a way that favors them, or do you think, I mean, this is more of a deeper political, philosophical thing, but do you think it's just our lack of knowledge of the system and our inability to be able to navigate through the system that gives us such high statistics in terms of prisons, unemployment, poverty, and all of those other areas?
I would say a bit of both, to be honest with you. And the reason why I say that is, if you leave aside the system of the failing systems, of, for example, of what, for example, how the government, for example, have failed us, for example, think about what we can do to improve ourselves. You mentioned obviously that maybe we need to educate ourselves with how the system works. So I guess this is where, masjids, this is where I think closer knit youth networks need to exist to provide that education. At the end of the day, why would someone help you if you're not educated about the process? There's not much. That's maybe that's how I'm thinking. And if I'm wrong, I would love to hear other opinions on this. But I personally feel that, especially in the sort of society we're living in, you rather upskill yourselves. It's one of the reasons why I mentioned that at the beginning. So I think my most important thing for me is, especially with Somali masjids, for example, who are tightening within their own communities, to provide a system in place to, I guess, educate. And of course, my biggest thing I want to say about that is, it goes back to the idea of stigma. And by that I mean is that within our own community, we have this issue of, for example, sometimes I may be talking generally, but this is just some stories. For example, or sometimes she won't tell anyone, she won't tell the community, she won't ask for that help because it's a stigma, it's a aib. She would rather say the will case Somali what the Gamajoga. So it's first of all, you have to break that stigma first of, and then the day the week or Kudahjar Habsi, we'll have to we have to support you guys as a community rather than shaming whoever, sometimes not even helping her. Obviously, whoever then after her. So it comes back to the idea of education really, and being self-aware within our own community. So I guess rather than looking out, we rather look inside, right? Especially within our community.
Another thing I found is there is also this I don't know why, but I guess in certain parts of our communities, particularly in those inshallah that are practicing and that are active, they tend to put their kids or children away from studying legal subjects, law or politics, something like that. I mean, just because, if you told your mom or another mom, like, I'm studying politics, because the politics in Somalia is so corrupt, and so really, they all automatically assume it's a negative subject. But then how are we supposed to learn? How are we supposed to develop the knowledge, the legal system, and how the legal system functions, and what its biases and what its advantages are, if not enough young people are being fed into the system to actually study law and actually bring that knowledge back into the community. So I think that's an important point. But also the other point about public shame, that's true, and that is an epitome of like our community. It's like with the issue, automatically I think we have this idea where it's just first thing is that's it. There's shamed and just I don't think I think naturally that's the natural position everyone goes into, and it's one of those. It's a good point that you mentioned. But I'm going to get into the Sheikh into this point at the moment. Sheikh, arrintan oo hadda hooyooyinka Sheikh Jibril wuxuu sheegay arrintan laga hadlaayo markay hooyo dhibaato ku dhacdo camal inay dhibaatada qarsoto. Hadda wuxuu sheegay Jibril oo laga xiro waxa ku dhacaan ومعاملة dhibaatada ay hore usoo bixi weysay caawitaan weydiiso sababta community-ga ka baqayso inay la cambaareeyo oo naceebeeyo day mucaawilo taas maxay waa dhaqan ahaan socdo waa dhinaca dhaqan iyo akhlaaqiyeed iyo meelahaas ay wataa umaleyn
bismillahi rahmaani rahiim arrintaasi waa arrin jirta runtii community-gana dhexdiisa ka jirta caana ka ah sidaan qiyaasayana labo وجه بيلاده لما طرف بيلاده لبض طرف مد وحاول خلطك حق قفك كإيمانيا والدك individually بدنا وحق إيمانيا حق community كلا يوم كارن مد حق والدك كإيمانيا ومركب هراء والدك حوي مركب تركض واحد على والدكنا المها وسيسك وطلع كلمة يمركب سوتشرو هدي ريال بدن marka hore feejignaan badan oo marka hore siinin dadka waalidka Soomaalidu intooda badan ma jecla ilmahooda xumaantooda in loo sheego hadii qof kale uu naseexay yiraahdo kala hadal wala hadii uu ku arko ilmuhu inta badan waalidku iska qariya marka uu maxalliga wadada ka lumayo qofkan kale waalidka wadankii marka la joogay beeyada dadka ilaalinaysa environment kala baxsanayo anuga hadaad rabaaxday iyo hadaad canaanato isku mid bay ahayd ما درسك ها كرنيسو أدير يابتي يقف وين والد احترام بتشري لكن هل كنت حاجة أنت بدل مارتي حرية الشخصية عابا أنت بدل غير نقاله شيء هذا مكان تي مركو حاوي وحاي كوكا هنا نقول واحد من المكان قادم بالغياب ودس ليرنان تي وضن كمرك لشوي لسمين كريم والد كمركا وحي عام عنده سكو أركيرين أما عام سكو مركا ما كرين مركو لصو شيء إن بدل نقول بصدا سو arkayna ama lagu ceebeynayo ama ilmihiisa la dabagalayo marar badan runtii experience badan waxa soo arag taa waxa xagga waalidka individual xaggooda markay noqoto oo markaas inay denial sameeyaan qof macna waxay noqonaysaa denial sameeyo isagoo og ilmihiisa inuu wada khaldan ku socdo haddana in laga hadlo arrintiisii ma ogola oo waqti early stage wax laga qaban karayo in laga hadlo ma ogola waa dhinac labaadna waxa weeye waxa xagga community marka waana mid keen xagga community markay noqotana qofku markay dhib ku dhacdo inta badan lama soo dhaweeyo qaab caafimaad oo niyad samiha laguma soo dhaweeyo xoogaa waa lagu ceebaya dhaqanka Soomaaliga waxa kamid ah inta ama wax yar ceebta waa la isku ceebaya wadogta naanaystooda haddaad fiiriso Soomaalida hadalladooda magacyadooda hebel ilay hebel محل يشتري لانجرة هبل جني هبل محل يشتري كل يعني ماشى أنت عيب عبيدك كعبارة وحكى له دعاء قفك هذه مثلا يرى حمصة أو قفك depression بس كدعاء حالة بدن بس كتير هذا قفك هذا إن ير مارتو هي هبل أو سلاح اللي برنا هل كسر لك بلاوية يعني قفك مركم حين نقول إزاي وحيس إنه سكترصده أو حنون كير إنه قرصده sida qofka xanuunka lagu ceebeynayay ama nabarka ka soo gaara lagu ceebeynayay qofkii shalay caafimaadka qabay maanta nabar baa isha kaga dhacaya isla markiiba magac baa looga dhigayaa shil baa warku geli karaa waxbaa ku dhici karaya barafku ku fikraya lugbu maartay ka jabaya laangara magac kale u qaadanaya marka maadaama oo calaamada ceebta markiiba la soo hormarinayo qofku marka wuxuu isku dayayaa inuu maartay aqoon gareeyo oo hataa dul laangara inuu qof si toosan socdo iska dhigo oo socodka xataa uu ilaaliyo keenaysa marka kulli waxaan maslahay wallahu a'lam labada dhinac way jirtaa community uma diyaarsano in qofka maxalli jiray niyad ma sami lagu soo dhaweeyo la caawiyo qofkana marka dhibkii inuu karsado aa markaa ka dhalata marka qayb waa laba waxaan is dhihi karaa waa khalad labada dhinacba ka dhaca oo qofku hadduu asagu yani nin dan leh ma daala baa layidhi qofkaana la rabaa marka iyada inuu wixiisa soo bandhigto oo ciddii haddii uu dakani ku ceebeynayo mid kaloon ku ceebeynin baa jira the information qofku inuu raadiyo oo markay intay dhibtu ku dhacdo intay dhibtu cusub tahay wax qabadka ay leedahay inuu qofku markaas wixii uu raadsado wallahu aclam.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Jibril. Again, if I ask you just a question regarding, so حتى العلم البارز وقتها some of the prisons, some of the bigger prisons in the UK. dadka madowga ama dadka muslimiinta ama dadka Soomaalida markay ku arkaan, what is their reaction to seeing a Somali Muslim person in such a high position or such a position of influence in their eyes? What have you noticed, the anecdotal encounters that you've had so far?
I'll be honest, unfortunately some of them have been negative. And I guess that's one stereotype. Inshallah, I hope that changes. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to have full-blown conversations with most of them. Majority of the time, we're speaking with governors and the head of the prisons rather than the prisoners themselves. I guess maybe the best way to put that is some of the prisoners that we spoke to, the ones in the library, the ones in the kitchen, are the ones that they're on good behavior. And so you have to think about, and I guess that answers your question on who are the ones on good behavior inside, that are getting the incentives to, whether that is cleaning, whether that is doing the kitchen, and whether it's the library. It's not the blacks or ethnic minorities. I haven't seen them. Majority of them, unfortunately, were locked away. And maybe there's a certain reason for that to be the case. As one thing I do notice is when it comes to behaviors, that violence is much higher amongst, I guess you can say, Muslims, but it doesn't mean that they don't have any rights and things in place for them. But alhamdulillah, one thing I've seen is there are, another thing is I would strongly recommend the Masjid, for example, to get in touch with Ministry of Justice. The reason I say that is because there's already a chaplaincy service in place within the Ministry of Justice, whereby they have networks and connections with, certain masjids, certain churches, gurdwaras, whatever you call it, religious places of worship, where they may have a representative of that religion come to give, da'wah, advice, wherever it is. So I strongly recommend the masjid to think about this as an initiative within their local. I think about where you're located. I think about your nearest, whether that is a prison or your youth institution. I would probably suggest the youth institution more. The reason I say that, there's probably more young Somalis under 18 that are in the youth institutes rather than the adult made prisons. So definitely that's something I would recommend the masjid to get in touch. And inshallah, if I can help with that in terms of finding some contact details for that, I will inshallah pass it on to you.
Oh, Jazakallah khair. That'll be good actually. I know the chaplaincy is quite big, isn't it? I know they do a lot of work. And I think one of our local masjids here, one of the imams is actually a chaplain as well.
That's needed. It's absolutely needed, definitely.
Yeah, inshallah, that's good. Could we, if you go back, I just want to go back to your work environment and then the corporate culture, and then how you find yourself working in such a corporate environment at the same time, the challenges you face as a Muslim person. So I'm talking about more along the you work a 9 to 5. All those types of challenges that you face, and just to see if you can just elaborate on that.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, one thing I would say is a bit different to your average corporate environment, where by that I mean, for example, working for an investment bank, the demand is definitely less in terms of is much lower. Working within a public sector job. This may in turn means that there are a lot of incentives in place, a lot of example, alhamdulillah, I'm free, I'm able to practice my religion freely. There is, you know, a prayer room with regular khutbahs, mashallah, because of strong Muslim network within the organization. And that's something I'm, you know, proud to see, alhamdulillah. Definitely in terms of like flexibility, the absolute flexibility does exist. The hours are not as intense as one would expect in a corporate environment. Yeah, alhamdulillah, it's
The khutbah, the prayer room, the
alhamdulillah, wudu areas, they're all there.
Is that across the whole civil
So
service?
good question. Good question. It honestly, it depends on which department you're in. I have a feeling the larger departments, the ones where you probably will have a larger workforce. I'm talking the Department of Work and Pension, Ministry of Justice, Home Office. Yes, every one of them has their own community of you know of a Muslim network in place, and so yeah, it may vary, because one thing people forget is sometimes that when I say civil service or when I say central government, people always think central London, but civil service can also be in Birmingham, can be in Sheffield, Newcastle, wherever. Of course, there may be some different manners of how things work out there, but of course, there are plans in place, inshallah, I think, to push some of these departments up north, maybe to create, you know, more job opportunities and things like that. Because civil services traditionally is London, central London, Whitehall centric type of job, because majority of my job is close related to whatever happens, whatever happens in Parliament.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. I think one of Boris Johnson's pledge when he was going for election, the last election, was to kind of expand the government and make sure that central government actually reaches the north. And I think it kind of echoed with a lot of people in the north, and I think that's one of the things that they're trying to do now. So they're trying to establish, I think, more hubs in Birmingham and Manchester and all these other northern areas. That's an expanding area as well. But just in terms of the prayers, the 5-time prayers, winter, it gets quite congested if you're doing a 9 to 5 job. Are you saying civil service is happy for you to take a regular break, go to pray, come back and do your work? Is that
if you make it, honestly, it depends on your relationship. And the thing is, you will always be protected under whether you're in a union or whether it's just general work discrimination. So you absolutely are allowed to go for your regular prayers, whereas Dhuhri, Asri, or Maghrib, for example. Of course, sometimes it may depend. You know, not all circumstances are going to be the same. Sometimes you may be in a meeting for an hour. It depends on how you're going to work that out with regards to, you're going to just stand up and leave when the time comes. Like, it depends. It depends on where you are and what's happening in that situation. So that's a difficult question to answer. But with regards to freely moving to go pray and having to do that without any questions asked, absolutely. From my own experience and from others' experience of talking to them, and of course, if there's any the case where there is a negative, you know, a situation that comes from actually, you know, going to prayer, and then of course say that, for example, your manager has a word with you about that. There shouldn't be such situations, and if there is, there are, you know, systems in place to not let that happen.
Okay, so you have certain rights as a Muslim, and those are protected under certain laws. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. I think in case a lot of people have this idea that, you know, like,
yeah, you're right. A lot of them may think, I'm gonna compromise on my salah, I'm gonna compromise on my deen if I work in such a place. No, alhamdulillah, there are, you know, fellow Muslims that are here to support you as well with regards to any difficulty you may have. At the end of the day, you know, we live in a society where you have the freedom to practice your religion, so alhamdulillah. So by all means, there should never be any issues. And I'm not even talking just civil service, I'm just talking generally in any workspace. But yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. That's easy. It's quite important that we clarify that, I think, to a lot of young people, that they do want to go for like such roles. They are quite ambitious and they do want to do things. But then we also have like some myths and like going around in our communities that certain, oh, you can't do this or you can't do that. And then there's you know, I mean, actually you can. There's a lot of things that you can do, and I just wanted to re-emphasize that point that you can actually practice your deen properly the way you want it without compromising any of your principles or any of your values. Just in terms of like Somalis, and how is there a lot of Somalis at the moment in the civil service? So how you guys are growing up?
It's growing. Definitely, the numbers are growing. Alhamdulillah. Yeah, the numbers are growing. I can't put a number on exactly how much there is. Maybe it's 80, maybe it's 100. I don't know. Maybe more.
Is it visible? Are they visible around?
Not in my department. I would personally say the department I've probably seen the most Somalis in, mashallah, it's the Home Office. Yes, mashallah, that's the department in quite a number of them. Like yeah, the numbers are growing. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, that's great. That is great, alhamdulillah. Final point, and then inshallah we'll go to the public questions. Career progression, trainings, what type of support do you get to develop as a person and also to develop your career within the civil service? What support is available?
It depends on what scheme you're on. Whether you're on a fast stream, it depends. It honestly depends. You can either be on a fast stream, a fast track, or direct employment. So I'll explain each one of them. If you're on the fast stream, which is the traditional graduate scheme, if you're going to be on that scheme with regards to progression, it's the most detailed one in terms of support, in terms of what's available to you, resources, in terms of where you're heading. It's the path is much more clear. The reason for that is because it's purely designed to fast track you into a certain senior level within a space of 3 to 4 years. So the resources and the support is available from day one. Then is the fast track apprenticeship, very similar to the fast stream as well. The only difference I would say is I think support and stops around the year 2. So it's rather than a 4-year program, it's a 2-year program with regards to how you want to shape your career whilst you're an apprentice. Once you move away from that program, it honestly is to do with yourself. It also has to do with how much you want to stretch your ambitions. And so yeah, inshallah. So it depends on where your ambitions are with regards to that. This could either be that you're happy to be where you are, you're happy to work and I guess not move. And a lot of people do, of course they do that. But of course, if you're young, from an ethnic background, you want to reach the top, inshallah. That's where we want to see you. So that shouldn't stop you, seeking out networking, seeking out your own advice, whether that's within your own department or whether it's externally. So it's on your choice, it's on your own there. There are the resources available to you. You just have to go out and get it yourself. No one's gonna, unless there are, of course, mentoring schemes available to you if you wish to adopt that as well. And through that, you can form a relationship with your mentor, and you can go from there with regards to where you want your, where you see yourself, and how many years it is.
That's a good point that you mentioned that, because the only reason I wanted to mention that is there are actually a lot of companies, and there are a lot of companies that I worked for that actually would sponsor you depending on the ambition that you show, A, B, and how determined you are to actually progress. They will actually pay for your degree, and they will actually pay for a postgraduate degree free, while you're also getting a full salary while you are working.
Yes.
So it's like those opportunities are out there, and I think
just to add on that point, you mentioned, you're right. Like I said, it also depends on your area of specialty that you want to focus on. For example, within Ministry of Justice, maybe this is not true anymore, but I guess I'm going to have to research this. But I remember last year, for example, there were schemes available. Say that you were a professional working within Ministry of Justice. There were schemes available to study at Cambridge University, but the degree had to be criminology or prison reform or something in relation to justice. And they pay for it, it's all part of the scheme. And the idea is you then come back and you continue your journey within that one department. And they, it's like a clause you may sign, you may be there, further for 3-4 years. So it depends on also the type of civil service you are. You can either be the one that's very happy in one department. I'm going to specialize in just prison policy, and I'll become the expert in prison policy. Nothing wrong with that. and you work your way across, or you could be the type of, which is the traditional one, the type of civil servant who wants to have the most broad knowledge in terms of everywhere. You can work 2 years at Home Office, learning about foreign national offenders. You can work at the Department of Environment, Food and Agriculture, and learn about how food standard agencies work. Or you can work in Ministry of Justice and learn about prison reform. You can do all of that stuff and have like a broad knowledge. That is more like a generalist rather than a specialist, of course. So again, it depends on your taste.
Yeah. Quick recap of all the opportunities that are available in civil service. So you mentioned the civil service fast stream. You mentioned the civil service 2-year apprenticeship that will eventually lead to a job, right? Correct?
So the thing is, the day you start is your first day of the job.
Okay.
The only circumstance could be the fact that after 2 years, depending on how well you do on the actual apprenticeship, you may not continue or you may continue. So just to clarify that point, the day you start, your first day within the civil service is your first day also in the apprenticeship. The apprenticeship is, one thing I forgot to explain was the fact that if you are an apprentice and are on a 2-year program, from Monday to Friday, it's a normal working day. Whatever job they give you job title, that's your job. You're going to work through that job. Like on the side, you must have to do some courses, somehow, as part of your qualifications. And with this, alhamdulillah, you also get 20% each month, which equates to 1 day a week. So you may be working Monday to Thursday, for example, you may be working a normal job 9 to 5 within your department. And on the Friday, you're given time off to study for the exams, to do the time for the courseworks. And sometimes, well, actually, every 2-3 weeks, you have to also attend classes. So it's like, think of it as getting a normal, academic qualification, on top of the fact that you're going to be getting real life work.
They don't give you like a menial job to do that. They don't like make the tea or photocopy. They're actually giving you actual responsibilities.
Yeah.
And they give you
So
actual something to do.
They start you, yeah, that's right. So they start you off immediately as a executive officer. So that immediately means that within the space of you being trained up, you are expected already to have certain responsibilities with regards to whether it could be policy, it could be governance, wherever it is. You start off on a level that majority of people have to, I guess, go through a lot to get in terms of application wise. So starting off already as an executive officer and working your way up to a high executive, senior executive and beyond, it's a good start, especially from where you're beginning really. So yeah.
For all those of you, I don't know if we do have any care leavers. I'm aware of the civil service do a 12-month care leave internship as well. And I think just exactly as you mentioned, Jibril, they also saw if there's an executive officer position in a specific department, and they give you a good salary as well. And after that 1 year, it could lead to a permanent job. So for all of you, if there are any leaders out there, I think the recruitment cycle might be closed now, but I think the next year they're also starting to roll that out now, inshallah. The final question for me is, what would you advise a 13-year-old Jibril that wants to join the civil service right now?
I would say, wallahi, don't rush. Take your time. At the end of the day, one thing I've realized is age is just a number. Anyone can retrain to become what they want to do. And one thing I've realized, especially in this lifetime, especially the world we're living in at the moment, you're going to change your career, 3 or 4 times within your lifetime anyway. So if you make one mistake now, it's fine. You will have another chance later as well. So inshallah, so I was just say, don't rush, wallahi. Take your time, do your research, and if you're ready to make the choice, go for it.
That's good advice. And one final thing I wanted to touch on is the skills needed and the discipline of whatever other criteria that civil servers are looking for. What are they looking for generally, like on a general basis, in terms of skills, the type of demeanors, in terms of mental strength? What do they look for in a person?
They've changed this up a little bit. Wallahi. They're looking for all type of people. You could be someone that's really good with numbers. Of course, then you would place within the finance team, or you could be an analyst. You could be an analytical individual. I think the big aspect of it is, generally speaking, you're just looking for someone who's a disciplined person, someone who's flexible, really good with people in terms of communication, someone who's, I think, able to, I guess, answer a question in the most concise manner without confusing the other individual. So yeah, well, those are the things I can think of right now.
It's one of the aims of the programs is to celebrate, showcase our success, the successful Somalis, the successful Muslims that are out there. Alhamdulillah, the media, in a way, is kind of negatively skewed towards bringing the worst of us to the limelight. So, alhamdulillah, one of the main aims, and I hope it does to a small extent, but inshallah, we will celebrate people that are successful in the community, and we will put them here to showcase their footpath and to see how the community could learn from their path and develop and grow in a way that they have done and that they would like to do as well. So, Jazakallah khair, Jibreel. If there's any questions, I'm going to hand over to Sheikh Hassan, who will, inshallah, take over from here.
Jazakallah khair. Mayala, Jazakallah khair, Jibreel. Jazakallah khair, walaalaha soo xaadiray intaba. Waxaan halkan lagu soo gudbiyey talo, طبعا waa talo, su'aal maaha. Walaal khadka ku jira waxaa leedahay asalaamu calaykum waraxmatullahi wabarakaatu. Ilaahay ajir idinka siiyo wanaag aad wadaan. Waxaan rabay in aan talo ku darsado, taladaas oo ah in la qabto mu'tamar 4 ama 3 beri soconaya xilliyada fasaxyada sida Scandinavian-ka oo ay sameeyaan oo kale. Culimada la soo casuumo sanad walba, insha Allah waxaan rajeynayaa inay dhalinyaro badan soo xirmi doonaan khayrkaas. Jazakallah khair, baan leenahay Najma Cabdiraxmaan, fariintaa kale inoo soo gudbisay. Haddii aad mikrofonkuna insha Allah tacaala hadda wixii ka dambeeya waa idin furan yahay, qofkii raba inuu taladiisa cod kusoo gudbiyo wuu samayn karaa, waxba male. Intaa kadib taladan haddii aan ka duulno, runtii waa la sameeyaa, waa la qabtaa muxaadarooyinka, mu'tamaraadka joogtada ah oo dhanka beri soconaya waa la sameeyaa, sanad walba waa la sameeyaa. Laakiin waxaa laga yaabaa levelka loo sameeyo Najma waxaa laga yaabaa inay Scandinavian-ka tahay. Scandinavian-ka qaabka loo sameeyo iyo qaabka xagga loo sameeyo baa waga yaraha kala duwan. Marka waa talo fiican, waana insha Allah tacaala waan jecelnahay inaan sidaas oo kale aan u develop gareyno, qaabkaas oo kale aan horumarino. Environment-ka xoogaa halkan UK iyo Scandinavian-ka yar yaraha kala duwan. Qaabka dhalinyarada Scandinavian-ka iyo dhalinyarada xaggan waxyaabaha ku kala duwan yihiin koowaad waxaa kamid ah qaabka Soomaalinimada. Dhalinyarada Scandinavian-ka joogay in badan waa Soomaali. Dhalinyarada xaggan joogay intooda badan ay Ingiriis yihiin. Waxaan sidaa u leeyahay waxa weeye xaggan ma arkaysid mu'tamar weyn inta lasoo qabto lasoo fadhiisto dhalinyaro ay fadhido keliya lagu hadlayo af Soomaali. Way adag tahay. Percentage yar baa dhalinyarada UK iyo wadamada Englishka laga hadlo af Soomaaliga sidaa u fahamta, sida UK, Canada iyo Australia iyo Mareykanka iyo kuwa la mid ah. Meesha wadamadan Scandinavian-ka iyo Yurubta inteeda kale ee luqadda Ingiriiska ku hadlin ay dhalinyarada Soomaalida af Soomaaliga ay adeegsadaan. Taas waa qaab yani sida u samaysan yahay wadanka society maartay environment-ka wadan walba uu kaga duwan yahay kan kale. Wadamada Ingiriiska laga hadlo dhalinyarada markay imaadaan waxay maartay Ingiriisku wadan kale kama xiga baa lagu yiraahdaa. Meesha wadamada kale laga yaabo in yar la maartay jidma ay dareemaan oo markaas ay dadka dhexgalku uunan aad u fududayn. Sidaa darteed luqadooda marka way ilaashan tahay. Sidoo kale intaan ogahay Scandinavian-ka oo kale iskuulada lagu baraa luqadda Soomaaliga dhalinyarada macallimiin baa jira dowladda ugu talagashay inay carruurta Soomaaliga ku hadlaan oo curriculum-kay ka mid tahay macallimiin bay leeyihiin waa iskuulka lagu baraa waa maado caadi ah iskuulka ay ku qaataan gurigiina waa laga hadlaa sidaa darteed bay marka waxay noqonaysaa in muxaadarada dadka oo loo jeedinayo la dhageystaan oo iyaga gaar ah markaas waa loo jeediyaa halkan laakiin iska daa carruurtii dadkii waaweynaa baa ka tegay luqadii waad arkaysaa in fariin kasta oo la sheegayo aad arkaysaa maartay in English loo maartay la doorbidayo dadkii ay maartay caadi isaga noqotay oo wax u baahan runtii in la soo celiyo oo laga shaqeeyo oo dadka markaas badina fahamsiiyo marar badan waxaa dhacda mudamaraadka hadda masalan hadda walaashu ay maartay soo maartay taladayna usoo siisay oo kale hadda Scandinavian lagu qabto Soomaaliya waa lagu qabtaa Soomaaliya ku baxan kulligood culimada loogu yeeray waa culimada Soomaaliya ugu waaweyneed ugu aqoonta badnayd intii la heli karayay baa timaada ka soo qayb gasha iyagoo wadamo kala duwan ka imaanaya culimadaas haddii la soo casuumo hadda halkan la keeno dhalinyaradana UK kama faa'iidaysan karayaan waayo waa language barrier baa jira culimadiina luqadaas dhalinyarada ay fahmayaan kuma hadlayaan dhalinyaradiina luqada waa maartay culimada ku hadlayaan Soomaaliga ma fahmayaan daasna macnaa qaybta ugu weyn waxaa qaadanaya qaybta libaaxa runtii waalidka oo ay tahay inay maartay kula dadaalaan carruurta inay luqada ay ilaaliyaan qof walbana waxa laga yaabaa inuu dadku la yiraahdo ilmuhu waddanka joogaan baa sida society baa sidana lagama maartay waxa lagama qaban karayo oo waddanka bay joogaan kada waxaan malaynayaa taas waa excuse ama maartay cudurdaar jilicsan weeye xoog badan tiir adag ku tiirsanayn inagaana u horkacna ilmuhu inay maartay luqadii ka tagaan waxaad arkaysaa waalidku isagii oo luqadiiba ku fiicnayn laftiisa waad arkaysaa haddana inuu erayada uu isticmaalayo in yaroo afarey oo uu ka garanayo luqadii inuu ilmihii kula isticmaalayo kula hadlayo oo uusan u isticmaalayn ilmihii si luqadii Soomaaliga inuu kula hadlo asagu ama inuu ku laazimiyo iska daa inuu ku qasbe asagiiba macnaha xataa aan xil badan iska saarayn dhinaca kale markaad fiiriso ciyaalku iyagu school full time dhigta haddana kharashka ugu badan iyo waqtiga ugu badan maxaa la geliyaa tuition-ka oo English science xisaab English science xisaab English science xisaab yaa inta lagu raaca waxaa jiray isku day la waday oo hadda muddo laga soo shaqeynayo oo maraakista Soomaalida UK iska kaashatay oo aad runtii looga soo shaqeeyay oo curriculum in laga soo maartay la soo sameeyay curriculum-kaas oo qayb maxaa la jiray manhajkaasi qayb Soomaaliya ay ka mid ahayd maraakistii xubnaha ka ahaa jamciyadda la sameeyay ka wada maartay ka wada sinaa ee kharashkeeda wada bixiyay waqtigeeda wada bixiyay fikirkeeda wada bixiyay waxaad arkaysaa in markii la soo daabacay curriculum-kii buugaagtii la soo daabacay la hal dhaqan geliyo in aad arkaysa xataa maartay in lagu leeyahay maartay kan maqaan Soomaaligi naga daana Islamic Studies na soo siiyay Islamic Studies English ku qoran yahay nin walba waxaan doon hawl fududeyska in maartay runtii xagga hawl fududeyska in la wada qaatay arrintan iyada marka waxaan isleeyahay wax bulshada ay u baahan tahay in dib lagu soo celiyo dhaqanka dhalinyarada sii lumaysa iyo kala fogaanshahan waalidka iyo carruurtooda ubadkooda waxa keenaya kow waxa ka ah language barrier-kaas luqadda lagu kala tagayo waa kow ka ah oo waxa aan rabno inaan iska wacyigelino oo aynu ku baraarugno oo xil iska saaro oo qof waliba runtii sida ay tahay uu qaato oo la ogaado dhalinyarada luqaf Soomaali maartay nin walba yani waalid ah oo fariintana codkanaga uu gaadhayo ka bilaabo gurigiisa ka bilaabo ilmihiisa inuu inta guriga la joogo kaliya waxa ku filan qofka waalidka guriga inta la joogo ilmuhu iskuulka intuu joogay ama tuushinga meesha doonaba ha ku hadlo luqadii banaankaas bulshada kula hadlo laakiin guriga marka la soo galayo in ridda kabaha meesha lagu soo siibayo in luqadda Ingiriiska lagu soo siibo waayo guriga gudihiisa Ingiriis kuma noola dadka ku nooli waa waalidkii ilmihiisii way waalidkii ilmihiisuna waa Soomaali marka isku day qof walba waalid ah waxaad xil iska saartaa oo maartay maanta laga bilaabo jadwal ka dhigata inaad fuliso guriga ridda markii laga soo galayo in luqadda Ingiriiska halka lagu soo siibo Soomaali lagu wada hadlo ilmuhu markuu sii baxayo ha sii qaato kabaha markuu gashanayo ingiriiska sii qaato hore u sii qaato iridaa soo dhaaf laakiin gurigan gudihiisa waxa way wax kugu laazimanaya inay ciyaalka ku hadlaan ingiriis ama iyagu ku sheekaystaan ama adigu aad ka ogolaat ma jirto way iska adag tahay challenge weeye oo ilmuhu waxaan ay la qabsadeen way adag tahay inay maxaa la dhihi jiray keenaan laakiin haddana haddaan arrinta iyada lagu dadaalin oo hardship laga marin iskama imaanayso mararka qaarkood waxaa arkaysaa dadka waalidka dadaala waxaan arkay nin maaragtay saaxiibanahay oo macallin ah oo hadda maaragtay runtii aad maaragtay u jeclaan lahaa ina maaragtay so waxaa wiil yar baan arkay oo u dhalay oo af Soomaali aad u wanaagsan ku hadlaya waa unugu shajir 6 magac baan u leenayaa markaan arkay dhowr sano ka hor bay ahayd waan la yaabay aad baan la yaabnay aan kaliya ma ahayn rag kooxa baan ahayn meel baan masaadan soo nimid ninkan yar af Soomaaliga aad ku cajiibka ku hadlayaan la yaabnay abiiban weydiino waxaan ku niri warniyo maxaad samaysay oo cunugan ma wadankii baad geysay ma yamaan gelin cunugan halkan ku dhashay oo North London halkan maartay Finsbury way halkan ku dhashay laakiin maxaa la jiray wadankan kama bixinin waayo af Soomaaliga inta sida wanaagsan seebaad u bartay wuxuu yiri alxamdulillah iyo wuxuu yiri arrinta iyada ah aniga iyo hooyadii baa waxaan ku heshiinay inaanan cunugaas English ku baran hadalkaas waa hadal weyn maxaa uga jeeda yani inaanan anagu maan isku dhibin inaan English cunuga yarka kula hadalno aanan isku wadeen ba anagii ma macnaheedu inaysan aqoon Englishka iyaga way yaqaanaan laakiin inaan practice kareyno barno cunuga anaga inaan isku laaziminay guriga anaga intaan joogno inaan af Soomaali kula hadalno sidaasaan ku guuleysanay inkaan af Soomaali ku bartay Englishka khasab uu ku baran wadankii uu joogaa iskuulkii baa banaankii baa laga hadlayaa wax walba TV-ga jinni wax walba ku hadlay marka adigu inta yar chance ka haysato inta gurigaaga joogo intayna la joogan carruurtu waa iska yarinta badan way inaga maqan yihiin maraan iskuulkeena maraan tuushinkeena maraan kubadkeena maraan dabaalgeeno banaankan baa loo sii wadaa guriga intay joogaan baa iska yar inta kalena way hurdaan inta yar markay guriga joogaan maxaan kula hadalnaa inta amarka hawn inta cun orod seexo ka cadayo waxaan samee bugta qaado homework ka shaqee amar way amar iyo inta kale maadaama guriga inta badan iska yaryar yihiin ciyaalka markay ciyaaraan kada ka sameynayna kada waxa ha yeelina kan ha sameynina waa amar iyo nahyi do you don't waa kulligood wada commands way wax luqadooda dabacsan iyo wax naxariisto inta badan kuna lama sheekaysano lama fadhiisto waan ku dheeraaday hadalkaas laakiin masaladaas iyada waa masalaan rabnay runtii in aad loo baraarujiyo loo baraarujiyo waxaan ku darlaa marka taas waa waalidkan inta hadalkaasi uu socday dhalinyarada ma aha kuwa yararka ee hadda hadalkayga aan fahmi karin laakiin dadka waaweyn oo kale hadda dhalinyarada waaweyn ee wax baratay qaangaadhka ah kaba soo qaadee macnaha dhowr iyo 10 jirka soo gaadhay luqadda fahmaya khitaabka ilaa iyo kuwa waaweyn xataa maxaa la jiray age-ka dhaxaa wixii 30 ka yar xataa iyagoo waalid ah oo caruuro dhalay still wali iska sii aamusay walaahiga ah waxaan leeyahay waxaan leeyahay maartay in iyaga laftooda ku baraarujin lahaa in af Soomaaliga ay isticmaalaan in badan waxaad arkaysaa dhalinyarada waxay soo wada barteen qof walba field gooni uu soo bartay qaale bulshada wax yar soo jeeda hadii la yiraahdo Soomaali kula hadal asagoo af Soomaaliga yaqaan qofkii wili gabadhan ku doona noqday haddana I don't feel comfortable hada marka waxa weeye waxaan iska noqonay dad korkana Soomaali ka hoostana cadaanka korkana ka madownaay hoostana ka madownaay oo ka cadnaay Ingiriis baan kana marka taas in kalsooni qofku inuu ku qaato oo maxalli jireen marka tiraado af Soomaali adar ma ku hadashid no point kule no point macnaheedu waxa weeye markaad af Soomaali waxaad ogaataa markaad af Soomaaliga ka tagto dhaqankaaga waad ka tagtay waad macsalaameysay dhaqan kala qaadatay completely dhaqankaaga waad macsalaameysay arrinta dhaqanka lafteeda in la isla fahmo u baahan oo dhalinyarada Soomaalida barnaamijka isaga ah in laga maartay la isla fahmo u baahan waayo in badan waxay aaminsan yihiin dadka waaweyn way dhaqan nooga hadlaan diin baa muhiima waliba gaar ahaan intooda maartay wax yaraha fahamta diinta soo fahamta inay yiraahdaan maartay markii la yiraahdo war luqadiina dhaqankiina ilaaliya oo waxaas cunsuriyad waay cunsuriyad maartay waxaas waay islaamnimada muhiima dhaqanka iyo waxaad ka sheekeynaysan muhiima qofka Soomaali ahana in badan inuu isku dayo dhalinyarada soo practice garaysa inta soo bilowda kii ugu fiican markaa kii xamaasad diimeed hayay inuu yiraahdo oo I'm looking Arabi barto Egypt aan aadaya meelowlo aan aadaya kamaan tagaya Arabi no barto Soomaaliga ganna kama yaqaano waa Ingiriis korka ka madow korka Soomaaliga hoosta Ingiriiska aha cad yani dhaqan diintii uu xoga yara fahmay bas خلاص waa inaan meel Arabi ka barta aada waa kaasa Arabigani luqadii koowaad oo dhalatay ma Arabiga anagoo soo dhaweynayno luqadii Islaamka ay tahay oo diinta Islaamka martay luqadii ku baxaysay ay tahay oo sax tahay hadana maca dalika waa inaad ogaataa yani aadanaha waxa in badan nolosha lagu ogaaday experience-ga in qofku luqadda hooyadii mother tongue waxa la yiraahdo luqadda hooyada qof waliba inta uu ka yaqaan qofka kale inuu luqadda labaadna ka baran ogyahay Arabiga aad rabtay inaad barato wala Ingiriiskan hada aad ku hadlayso hadaan Soomaaligaagu sax ahayn markaad Soomaali tahay Soomaaligaagu haduusan saxnayn waxun baa ka maqan pointiyon baa ka maqan waliga ay Allah waxa doonto ismood pointiyon baa dhiman tahay maxaad ka waran yani luqadaadu maxay ku taraysaa hadaad maanta yani aad istiraahdo bulshada Soomaalida la hadal oo aadan hadal deeqsin karayn bal iska daa inaad deeqsiso kaligeed ku hadashee su'aal lagu weydiiyay kaliya inaadan kaga jawaabi karayn waa dhibaato tada leh marka macnaheedu waxa weeye adiga laftaadu hadhowto luqadda kale maartay luqadda labaad sida aad si sax ah ugu fahamto way adag tahay yani qofku laba jeer maskaxdu tarjumaad bay laba jeer dhowr jeer samaysaa dalka waxaan ku fogaan insha Allah taala walaashan waa mahadsantahay walaana jazakallahu khair hadii aad yani wax dheeraad aad ku daraysan najmo waad soo qabsan kartaa walaalaha kale laftoodana waan siinayna fursad qofkii rabo inuu wax weydiiyo oo su'aal weydiiyo walaalkan Jibriil baa barnaamijka caawa martiin ugu ahaa insha Allah taala topic uu ka hadlay iyo wax kale oo related la su'aal kale oo xiriir la leh mawduuci qofka weydiinaya iyo qofkii comment dheeraad ku daraya labadaba waxa kale oo fariintan hadda ugu gudbinaya insha Allah taala in horta fariinta dadka la gaarsiiyo gaar ahaan dadka maxalli jireen ama gruubyada WhatsApp-yada fariinta loogu diray maartay nagula jira ama dadka maxalli jireen meelaha live-ka hadaan ka soo galnay mid kamid ah kaga jira intaba inay dadku u gudbiyaan sidoo kale fariintan maartay arrimahan wacyigelinta bulshadu insha Allah taala jimco walba way jiraan marka ku soo talagala insha Allah taala 7 to 7:15 insha Allah taala waan bilaabaynaa hadii la yiraahdo jimco walba il hadii uu cudurdaar jiro waan soo sheegaynaa sida jimcadii hore oo kale hadii wax naga baaqan waan soo sheegaynaa marka insha Allah taala intiina joogtaan ku talagala oo maartay timetable ku buuxsada dadka inta kalena u sii sheega insha Allah waxaan in fariinta la gaarsiin qof walba oo fil gaar ah bartay oo raba jecel inuu maartay community-ga u soo gudbiyo inuu nala soo xiriiro si aan platform-ka marka aan u siino oo fursad aan u siino insha Allah taala barnaamijka ka qayb qaato hadii la yiraahdo waxyaabaha inta ugu badan aan u baahanahay meel walba bulshadana waa qofku oo meel walba maartay korka dhan wada xanuunayo wax walbana dawo uga baahan qaybaha maartay maartay daboolna waxa kamid ah arrimaha caafimaadka oo waxyaabo badan maartay ku xiran yihiin arrimaha waxbarashada sidan hadda sharciyada oo kale legal system-ka iyo maartay qaabkan hadda caawa aan ka hadlayno qayb kamid ah sharciyada iyo cadaaladda iyo maxalli shisaan shaqada iyo shaqaalaha iyo maartay xuquuqda shaqada iyo shaqaalaha dhalinyarada iyo oo maartay iyagu intaas soo hoosgalaya goonina ka sii ah iyo wixii kale ee markaas iyada loo baahan yahay oo dheeraad ah arrimaha guriga housing-ka iyo housing system-ka iyo taas social welfare-ka iyo waxa la midka ah lafteeda insha Allah taala markaan helno dad aqoonta looga baahan yahay leh inaan maartay iyada lafteeda dadka ka caawino marka jazakumullahu khairan aan iska almeysana insha Allah taala haddana platform-ka cidii wax ku daraysa ama su'aal weydiinaysa ayaan siinaya jazakumullahu khairan ayaan waxaad moodaa su'aalaha ma jiraan badan dhinaca youtube ma fiirinin laakiin sii wad hagana fiiriyaan marna wax su'aalaha
Right, we're just going to inshallah, see if there's any questions on the other platforms, and then we'll see if people have any questions, and then we'll throw those questions at you. I guess one question that I have is the ministries. So the difference between, a lot of people might be confused. What do we actually mean by central government? If you can maybe elaborate on the constitutional order in the UK, the local government, and then regional government and central government, and how they work together, to the best of your knowledge. Hello, Jibril. Sorry, I was talking. I don't think you heard me. I was just saying, one question I have is if you
I was on mute.
Yeah, I was on mute as well. I didn't hear me. I was just wondering, what's the difference between, like, we keep talking about central government. Can you maybe elaborate on what central government is and the difference between local government, regional government, and central government, and the power order in the UK Constitution?
Is with the UK constitutions is unwritten. There's not actually something that's actually written in a constitution. So they call it uncodified or unwritten. So it splits between Parliament, the executive, and the judiciary. And so, of course, we understand what the role of the Parliament is. They are elected individuals that represent certain constituency. Then it's the judiciary system. These are the judges, the lawyers, the solicitors, the court system in place that push the legislations. And of course, then you have the executive, and this is where the civil service comes into place. So the executives are civil servants and government ministers. So government ministers are of course also Parliament because they are elected ministers, but their second job will also be to implement the rule of law within their own department. This is why, of course, the 5 main jobs available within the highest office of this country: Home Office, Foreign Office, the Treasury, and so on and so on. So with regards to central government, that's literally to do with is Whitehall, I think, simply speaking. And local government are your local Camden / any local institutions within those councils, and they are the ones that are implementing those laws within that area. So the best way to describe it is with local, if you want to make any immediate change, rather go through your local rather than go through central government. Central government, of course, looking from a wider, bigger picture compared to the local councils. So try to look for your local council at the beginning, and maybe from there, maybe stretch forward to local MP. Remember, your local MP may be representing you via the Parliament, i.e. Parliament / central government. The local council is the one that's going to be not responsible, but I guess the ones that's going to be taking any concerns that you may have within your own road, within your own area, your park, whatever that is. And mashallah, there has been a good number of local councillors come up in the last few years. So inshallah, we just need to do more of that going forward.
Yeah, the only reason I ask that is because I think a lot of people don't actually know what the role of the MP is. So a lot of people would be having, say, local issues, such as maybe having overcrowding in the housing, problems with the housing benefits, and local issues like that, and they take that to the MP. So a lot of people actually know that that's not actually the role of the MP. That's more like
MP sometimes may not even respond. MPs may not even respond sometimes.
Yeah.
Rather than go through your local councillor, who would probably push further and stronger within the council, rather than go through an MP who's probably dealing with 100 million other things. I mean, of course, you have the right to have your MP in the area to answer any questions that you may have, but with action being taken, you'd rather go towards your local councillors. I was just going to touch upon, of course, as you may know, obviously, next year there's going to be, this is totally different too. This is just a side note. Maybe I was just going to ask you, just like on a discussion, And I just want to know, I'm sure you've seen the news with regards to, was it the mayor of Islington? I forgot her name, was it Freya? And now she's defected to the Conservative Party to go to, to support the London mayor, what's his name, Sean Bailey. I was wondering, how do you guys go, how as a Masjid would you guys go about, I guess, promoting and pushing for young people to get involved in politics?
I think the Masjid as a whole is character, so I think legally they have to be politically neutral. They can't really promote one area, A or B. But I don't know, I guess this may be a question for Sheikh Hassan. I'll probably ask him, but then you delve into the question of, is it halal, is it haram to vote, participate in a democracy? And I mean, there's a serious question, and there's important questions that would would determine whether the Masjid takes a position in encouraging young people to go out there and vote, or whether they take a more, they abstain from. But this Masjid, alhamdulillah, is being quite active. I think every elections they do get local MPs. I think they give the local MPs platforms, or local candidates platforms to come into the Masjid and actually put their message out, and also speak to the Musallis themselves. So I think that's one action that the Masjid is taking, building a very good, strong relationship with the current people that are representing the local community, but also people that are also candidates. So I think they give platforms to both sides. But apart from that, I think to really know what else could be done, but it's probably a question for Sheikh Hassan, so I'll probably give him the platform.
Bismillah. جزاكم الله خيرا. سؤال شخص كلي وسؤال هذول بيسكتين كرئيسو. مدة قوات أرض مسجدكم معناها مسجد عام ما قلبات وما والله لا يمكن أسوق خاصة. لكن مسجدكم إذا ما ممكن يسوون قسمه لكن community كمسجد وحدنا مسجد ما يبغى يحلقها على مكاوش. أنا يتاي. community كنا فهمتي ناد بيجو جيران تدون بجرو هذا هو شخص كذا بجرو مرتو ولا يه. dadka community masjid katirsanaa as a management ka masjidka ma aha yani role-kooda inay marka hawshaas iyagoo ay horkacaan karo laakiin masjidku waxa weeye community ku xiran in marka community in la abaabulo oo la isku dabarido oo waxa weeye la dhiirigeliyo oo la wacyigeliyo oo maartay lagala hadlo maartay inay hawsha qayb ka noqdaan society ku dhex nool inay qayb qaataan naas waxaa jiray waa arrin furan marka sameeyo ma la geli karaa mise lama geli karo masaladaas macnaheedu xaraan iyo xalaal taan markay gasho waa wax culimada mar badan ka hadlaan qofku haddii yani laga baqayo diintiisa inay maartay wax maartay ku nuqsaanto meesha iyada wuxuu dhinto ama maartay uu ku fasaado oo kale inuu iska joogaaba maartay badanaa wanaagsan laakiin qofku haddii uu qof markiisa hore dhisan yahay diiniyan dhisan the same time sababta meesha u galayana ay tahay in uu macnaha بعض الشر أهون من بعض baa la yiraahdaa dhib yani uu kala fudud yahay yani iyadoo dhib wada tahay haddana waa kala fudud yahay maadaama meesha lagu wada nool yahay meel aan looga soconin arrintan maxaa la jiray go'aanka la qaadanayo uu adiga against you uu noqon karayo haddii meesha ka maqan tahay wixii aad ka bedeli karayso marka iyada adiga haddaad wax ku beerin karayso wax ka bedeli karayso oo لصالح المسلمين marka iyada ah uga soo qaban karayso yani waxay noqonaysaa inaad daruuro ahaan markaas hawshii aad ku karayso oo qayb qaadan karayso haddii aan macnaha markaad fiiriso tan marka midda ah qofku in haddii marka iyada uu og yahay diintiisa iyo maartay isagu sanqayso isku kalsoonayn uu og yahay inuu marka hadaad raacayo iska jooga wanaagsan ama haddii qofkani qof isagu isku kalsoon hadaf lehna uu yahay arrinta meesha u galayna aysan ahayn isagu markaas inuu nimankaas ku milmo oo hawshaas marka uu dhaxgal aanay ahayn kaliya ay tahay inuu dadkan community-ga muslimiinta ah maslaxadooda waa kan hadda waxaa iska soo badanaya isna nacayb iyo waxyaabo badan oo hadda maartay howlo badan baa iska soo jira oo soo kobcayo oo maartay runtii hadda westernka dadka hadda siyaasadda hoggaanka u hayay inta badan waa dad yani kasoo maartay lid ku ah masaalixda marka maadaama sidaas tahay in marka hawshiida laga qayb qaato oo maadaama lagu nool yahay oo meelan loo soconin in laga qayb qaato taas maxaa la jira dhalinyarada waan ku horinayna waan ku dhiirigelinaynaa annagoo isla markaa dardaarmayna in aan la daad raacin ee sidan iyo diinta la ilaaliyo allahu aclam.
Guess that answers your question, Jibril. So, but that's good though. Arrin muhiim like in like I said that because ultimately, if you're not there to look after your interests,
I mean, you can't expect
other people to look after your interests for you. And I think like if you're away from the dinner table, you know, I mean, you can't really have your say. But long term, I think if we're gonna, and I don't think anyone's going anywhere. And I think if we establish, we might as well establish our roots here, and part of that is partaking in the political process, the decisions that affect us. So I think with both Black Lives Matter movement, we've seen, you know, how the biases and how the system is leaning towards those who architect the system. So if you're there and you're designing the system, you're obviously going to design it in a way that benefits you. And I think for too long now, the system it's working against just general, I think, ethnic minorities, Muslims, and it's favoring, I think, those in power and the elite groups and those ethnicities that are the majority in the Western society we live in. Like there's a question of biases, racism. There's a lot of factors in there. I think the only way we can is put my voice out. I know there's actually quite a lot of political activists coming up at the moment, and I think we just have to be strategic in giving our voices to like people that align with our values and people that we think. We might not get someone who completely aligns with all of our values, but I think we have to be strategic in selecting people that are like that we think are in the best interest of us as a whole community in the West. But I mean, I guess people are free to choose whoever they want, but as long as they electing someone they feel honestly is working to serve the community and improve the community, I think that's the message of the Sheikh, is to partake in it. It's just, you know, the benefits outweigh, I guess, the evils out of it. So most cases is just looking at those two factors and looking at it from that angle. So yeah, but it's a good question. It's a good question. I know you're part of FOSIS, the Islamic Society, the Federation of Islamic Societies, and I know they're doing a lot. And what a lot of people don't realize is there's a Somali sister that's actually the head of FOSIS, isn't it? Not FOSIS, the National Student Union. Sorry, the National Student Union as a whole. But I think part of FOSIS is they really, I think they supported her in this election, taking part in the National Student Union. And I think they gave a lot of protection around during the election process. So a lot of people actually don't know that. So I don't know if maybe you can talk about your knowledge about this.
I wasn't really never involved fully within FOSIS. I know I used to live in the headquarters. I knew a fair bit about how the process was like in you know, not I can't really say much about it. And plus, I've been away from that organization for about more than a year now.
But the Islamic student unions and FOSIS in particular, I think are a good example of having a political of mobilizing and having a body that actually fights for your rights and actually you know, we're just working within the law to raise your voice, to present your case.
No, it's definitely the perfect model. It's the perfect model how, you know, things should be done correctly, you know, with integrity, with honesty, and just the fact that, you know, with pride of, you know, who you are, especially with regards to your deen. At the end of the day, the most important thing for them was deen first, everything else comes second. And of course, with that would follow honesty, integrity, and everything else. So, even being involved in an organization, definitely, you know, I'm proud of it, and inshallah they grow beyond where they are at the moment.
Yeah, it's definitely growing because there's grassroots organizations coming up, and I think there's like MENCAP. I don't know if you've heard of MENCAP or MENA. Sorry, they're Muslim MENA. I think they're a Muslim organization that deal with environmental issues, like environmental issues. They're growing very strong now, and there are little pockets of organizations that are really rising up now, rooted in Islamic values, and they're also showcasing their and aligning themselves with the general community as well. So it's a growing field, but alhamdulillah, I think we do need to like voice it out there. If there's no questions, Sheikh Hassan, I think we have no questions. Jibril, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for being our special guest tonight. Thank you for giving us your time. And inshallah, if anyone sends us questions in afterwards, we will inshallah post it over to you and we'll get a response from you inshallah. But Jazakallah khair. Thank you for joining us, Jibril. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Hassan. And thank you everyone who's joining us.
Thank you for having me, both of you. Jazakallah khair.
بارك الله فيك إن شاء الله تعالى. كلية وحنقدر لها your fasting محل meeting لكن ما last إن شاء الله تعالى يقرأوا ما تسوق بغاندون تدي لا إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله.
جزاك الله خير إن شاء الله.
جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
هذا قلنا وها خليه قاعد يستوي. hosting